The Chanukah by the Sea event in Bondi was meant to be a celebration, a gathering of community under the warm Sydney sun. Instead, on that sweltering December evening, it became a flashpoint, a vivid, jarring illustration of just how quickly public order can unravel. Imagine you're there, the festive atmosphere suddenly shattered by a torrent of abuse, a small contingent of police struggling to contain a volatile crowd. The air crackled not with joy but with animosity. It was a moment that forced Australians to confront an uncomfortable truth, that even in our sunburnt country deeply entrenched divisions could boil over, threatening the very fabric of social cohesion. This wasn't some isolated incident, it was a symptom, a stark warning that something was fundamentally amiss, prompting the federal government to launch a royal commission. Before this incident, Bondi was for many synonymous with surf and sand, a postcard image of Australian leisure. For the Jewish community it held a deeper significance, a vibrant centre of faith and culture. The people involved in that night's chaos came from all walks of life, converging on the foreshore for very different reasons. On one side, families and friends celebrating a centuries-old tradition, expecting the peace and security that should be a given in a democratic society. On the other, protesters fueled by a mix of anger, misinformation and genuine grievance, their voices escalating from chants to vitriol. This wasn't about a clash of individuals but a collision of narratives, beliefs and a profound misunderstanding that simmered beneath the surface of everyday life in our cities. For years the undercurrents of prejudice had been present, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted, but rarely had they manifested with such raw public intensity. The Royal Commission would soon delve into the complex tapestry of these lives, seeking to understand how we arrived at such a dangerous precipice, and what could be done to pull us back. The incident at Chanukah by the Sea unfolded quickly. On the 7th of December, as dusk settled over Bondi Beach, a crowd had gathered for the annual celebration, a joyful communal lighting of the menorah. The organizers had obtained the necessary permits, expecting a peaceful, family-friendly event. However, as the celebrations began, a counter-protest formed, growing in size and intensity. What started as a demonstration of solidarity for Gaza quickly morphed into something far more sinister. Eyewitnesses described a barrage of anti-Semitic slurs and threats hurled at the attendees' children. There to witness the lighting were exposed to hateful rhetoric. Police presence was minimal, reportedly just 3 general duties officers and a supervisor, with a commander occasionally checking in. This became a critical point of contention. Was this allocation of resources reasonable? Especially considering other Chanukah events were happening across Sydney that same day in places like Dover Heights and the North Shore. The police, outnumbered and under-resourced, struggled to contain the situation, their efforts seemingly overwhelmed by the sheer volume and aggression of the counter-protesters. The celebration, intended to be a beacon of light, became a symbol of vulnerability, raising serious questions about public safety and the right to peaceful assembly in Australia. The footage circulated widely online depicted a community under siege, their fundamental right to practice their faith freely and safely seemingly eroded. This shocking incident and a rising tide of similar reports across the nation led the Australian government to establish a royal commission into anti-Semitism and social cohesion. Royal Commissions are powerful tools established under the Royal Commissions Act 1902 with broad powers to investigate matters of public importance. This one was tasked with examining the causes and nature of anti-Semitism in Australia, its impact on social cohesion and what measures could be taken to combat it. The interim report handed down by Commissioner Virginia Bell was highly anticipated. It was not a final judgment but a preliminary assessment offering initial findings and recommendations. The Commission heard evidence from victims, community leaders, law enforcement, and academic experts. It examined specific events like the Bondi incident, scrutinizing police conduct and resource allocation. Arguments were put forward by various stakeholders. Some called for urgent restrictions on public protests, the banning of specific phrases, or even changes to immigration policies. The core issue for the Commission was how to balance fundamental rights, the right to protest, freedom of speech, with the need to protect communities from hate speech and violence. Evidence included harrowing personal testimonies, expert analysis of online hate speech, and detailed accounts of security failures. What was truly at stake was not just the safety of one community but the future of a diverse, multicultural Australia, and whether its legal frameworks were adequate to protect all its citizens. The interim report, as expected, offered more questions than definitive answers, reflecting the complex and sensitive nature of its mandate. Commissioner Bell's recommendations focused heavily on improving police training and resource allocation for public events, urging a more proactive and nuanced approach to managing potential flashpoints. It highlighted the need for better intelligence gathering and clearer protocols for assessing risk. The report suggested a review of existing public order legislation to ensure it adequately addresses modern challenges posed by organized hate. It also emphasized the importance of community engagement and education initiatives to foster understanding and combat prejudice at its roots. However, what was truly revelatory about the interim report was what it did not recommend. It did not call for urgent restrictions on protests or marches, nor did it recommend the banning of phrases or the restriction of immigration. Despite strong advocacy for these measures from some quarters, this indicated a cautious approach, mindful of the delicate balance between protecting freedom of speech and preventing incitement to hatred. The outcome, therefore, was not a sweeping legislative overhaul but a series of measured, practical steps aimed at enhancing public safety and police effectiveness in the short term, while reserving deeper, more systemic recommendations for the final report. Justice in this interim phase was framed not as punishment but as prevention and the painstaking work of rebuilding trust. For everyday Australians, this interim report carries